Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Prospect Central 101. My name is Chris Robbins, and today I'm joined by
Daniel Liegmann?
and today we are going to be breaking down the Patricia Press Conference and talking a little bit about the Lions. So I don't know how much of the press conference you happened to catch, but from what you did see or hear, what are your first thoughts and initial impressions on Matt Patricia?
Well, Chris, unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the actual press conference. I'll leave it to you to guide me through it. But from what I understand, Patricia definitely seems confident in his ability to take on a lot of responsibility and initially put forth a really interesting variety of responsibilities. So he appears to be taking on a lot of input in all three phases of the game. Don't know how I feel about that. What are your first initial thoughts on that?
Yes, so actually, I was just about getting that myself, but yeah, I do think it's interesting that he's really going to try and take an impact in a leadership position right away with the team. Although I kind of like that. I mean, you want your head coach to be that figurehead, be that leader, and a lot of the good teams in the NFL today have that. We see that with Bill Belichick. We see that with um, what Doug Marrone was able to do with Jacksonville and his turnaround. We saw what McVay was able to do with the Rams this year. So a lot of these, especially the newer coaches that really get promoted through, first-time coaches, have done surprisingly well lately, actually. So um, definitely something that could be a concern if he takes on too much at one time. Although I think if anyone's able to do it, out of the available coaches that we had to hire, Patricia's probably one of the most qualified guys to be able to do that.
I agree. One thing I really liked as this process went on and I looked at his resume was the fact that he seemed to have a wider range of experience, not only in football, but also in other areas, which can't always necessarily be a measurement for success. But I do like the fact that he seems adaptable and he seems ready to take on any kind of challenge in any sort of, and the natures, even if the natures of said challenges seem to be evolving. Like, for example, he had the opportunity, as I understand it, to become a rocket scientist, which is a radically different path from most football coaches. So, yeah, that's something that I really think is impressive about Patricia is his range of experience, not only in football, although he does have a very large range of experience there, long-time defensive coordinator, and I believe he also worked with the offensive side of the ball as well. So yeah, that seems to be it's a really good hire, and I like it more and more as the process went on.
Awesome. So yeah, you did bring up the offensive side of the ball. He is the former assistant offensive line coach, and he actually got brought in as an offensive assistant when he first came to New England. But of course, he is a defensive coordinator. He spent a lot of his time in New England on the defensive side of the ball. So with the, um, I want to say, relative lack of success that the Lions have had on defense recently, what do you expect going forward from Patricia to do to improve that side of the ball? And what would you like to see change, if there's anything schematically, if there's anything from a situational standpoint that we noticed throughout the year that you want to see improve going into the 2019 season?
Well, Chris, I think that one of the things about Patricia is his defenses in New England haven't always had a lot of talent. I think especially if you look at this year, he's had to do a lot with very little. And I mean, anyone that can make Kyle Van Noy look like a legitimate playmaker in the Super Bowl is doing something right, in my opinion. So yeah, it seems like he runs more of a hybrid scheme. Although personally, what I've seen from him is more so 4-2-5 nickel as opposed to a lot of 3-4 looks. But he does seem to sprinkle those in every once in a while. So yeah, I think what I want to see from Patricia is primarily adaptability. We don't have the personnel, in my opinion, to run a true hybrid at this point. And I don't think, unless Bob Quinn has an amazing offseason that blows us all away, we'll be able to run the entirety of what he ran with New England in his first year. That's just my opinion, of course. But yeah, I think what I'm looking for is adaptability. I'm looking for an ability to coach players up, especially since our defense is looking to be rather young next year. I expect Quinn to really heavily emphasize defense in the draft, and I expect upwards of 4 or 5 of our starters to be under the age of 25, and with first year or second year NFL experience. So yeah, I think that's a major factor, just to be able to coach up and develop these young players into something that works well, not just for now, but for the future moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, as you said, with the youth of the defense, the Lions have young guys at every single spot. At DT, there's Ashong. DE, there's Zettel. Obviously, linebackers, there's Jared and Jalen Reeves, maybe. Cornerback spot, there's Tease Tabor. Safety spot, we have Miles Killebrew. So a lot of guys really in that spot where they're almost not necessarily like do or die, but they're at like critical moments in their career where they're really impacted strongly by good coaching, and able to either flip that switch or not. And getting a defensive mind like Patricia after having an offensive mind in here for so long in Caldwell could really, really help. So while you were talking in the background, I brought up a couple of key statistics, including the overall scoring defense, as well as the fourth quarter defense, which is what I'm showing right now. You see here the Lions average about a touchdown per game in the fourth quarter, which is bottom 10 in football. And New England is right here, top 10, at about 5.5 points. So, is there anything that you really like about Patricia and how he's able to adjust throughout the game, and even more so throughout the regular season, that he could bring to Detroit that we may or may not have seen here in the past?
Sorry, what was the number for the ranked defense for the Lions' fourth quarter defense?
23.
Again?
So bottom 10.
Pardon? 10th. Okay.
Bottom 10. New England is actually 10.
Yeah, overall, I've seen a lot to like from Patricia in terms of in-game adjustments. I understand that he had a awful Super Bowl. I think most all of the Patriots defense had an awful Super Bowl. But if you look at, for example, the AFC Championship game, the Jags were really starting to gash on the Patriots in the run and opening up play action in the first half. But I felt like they really clamped down hard in the second half. Patricia made the right adjustments to stop Fournette and make sure that Blake Bortles had to throw the ball, which I thought was really impactful towards the Patriots coming back and winning the game. I mean, like, we like to talk a lot about Tom Brady and how he's always making comebacks in these playoff games. But I think one of the things that helps Tom Brady do that is the fact that the defense really clamps up in the second half.
Yep.
I think that, as with all New England coaches, we have to wonder how much of that is Patricia and how much of that is Belichick. But I think Patricia's a strong mind in his own right. So I think it should be able to translate well enough. One of the things, though, that I do have concerns about is the Lions were a terrible first quarter team, actually. I noticed whenever the Lions the graphics came up in the latter half of the season for the Lions, we always saw something like 36-6 outscored in the first quarter or something like that. And so one of the things I have had concerns about for the Lions last year was the fact that we always seem to get off to slow starts. And so the Patriots seem to be a slow starting outfit. So that's one concern I guess I have about Patricia. Do you share that concern, or what are you?
A little bit, but again, I have the stats up here. This is the first quarter statistics. Detroit was 31st, actually last, tied with Tampa for the worst first quarter defense last year, while New England was actually 13th. So I do think that it's something where we're probably not going to get much worse. Well, it's probably good to see a little bit better first quarter D. We're certainly not going to be where we are right now. That's definitely something to look out for. On the offensive side of the ball, I can't say the same thing because we're probably not going to be doing much different on offense. I don't foresee, at least. I'll see if I can bring these up. Check first quarter points a game. I bet we're probably last here too. 24th, so again bottom 10. While the Patriots were 8th. So top half in both offensive and defensive scoring in the first quarter, while the Lions were worse in defensive and bottom 10 in offensive. Of course, a lot of that is more so Belichick, I think. Kind of hard to say what Patricia's going to do there. And part of that could be talent, too. And particularly on the offensive side, New England has Tom Brady, and we have literally like no run game. So it's definitely something interesting.
I just want to say that he's the indisputable GOAT for quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Trying to find out. Oh, yeah, rushing play percentage. So one thing that I accidentally clicked on it when I was trying to find it. But one thing that really stood out statistically about Patricia's defense is the amount of times that teams were trying to rush against them. Here it is. Oh my gosh, I clicked on the wrong thing again. 1 second. There we go. The Patriots actually got rushed against the 4th least out of every team in the NFL. So they were thrown against the 4th most. In a conference-division that's really based on the ground and pound system, despite the fact that we only were 12th ourselves. What do you think that leads toward going forward, especially being more of a pass defense? The Lions have a lot of their talent right now. Tease Tabor, Darius Slay, Glover Quinn in the secondary. So do you think that this is going to be a good thing for Detroit if this translates?
I am actually really surprised by that statistic, Chris. Particularly because the Patriots seem to be a very secondary heavy team. They have lots of guys in the secondary that I think are really good to above average. Malcolm Butler, Devin McCourty. Eric Rowe is a really good slot corner. Stephon Gilmore is obviously a really good corner. So I'm really surprised by the fact that the Patriots appear to have such. I think that speaks volumes as to the Patricia Belichick regime's ability to stop the run and force teams to pass on them, even when they don't have great front seven talent. I think aside from Donta Hightower and maybe Trey Flowers, I don't recall a true difference maker in that Patriots front seven. So that's really impressive work by Patricia.
And you kind of see that here. You would expect the opposite, but the Patriots are actually second worst in yards per attempt against the run. So they're rushed against the fourth least, but they give up the second most amount of yards per carry, which is actually quite a bit worse than Detroit at 20th.
I would also say that there's also the possibility that we could be discounting the role of the Patriots offense. When you're going up against Tom Brady, you're not going to have the opportunity to run the ball, especially if you get down early. Then it can really snowball on you unless you start putting up points and zoning the rest to put up points. That coaches tend to go more pass heavy. So I think that's also a major contributing factor to that.
Oh, for sure. So the next thing I wanted to bring up here is Detroit was a very, very good turnover team last year. Tied for second best in the league, just barely behind Baltimore. While New England was almost bottom 5. They only got one turnover per game compared to R2. So do you see that being a factor because of talent? Glover Quinn with the forced fumbles, Darius Slay leading the league in interceptions, or do you think that that's going to be a schematic issue that carries over from New England?
If you ask me personally, turnovers are a really difficult stat to replicate year in and year out, just because it's so situational, and there's so many factors that go into the amount of turnovers the team has. Not all of this is necessarily something within the team's control. So ultimately, I don't put a ton of stock into creating turnovers as far as a defensive stat. Of course, creating turnovers is great, and you really want to create turnovers in order to have a great defense. But just to me, turnovers are really dependent upon the offense screwing up rather than anything to defense. Well, no. You kind of get what I'm saying, or am I not making sense here?
You're fine. Just say your piece. Someone will understand you out there. Sure.
Yeah. So, overall, I feel like turnovers are more so random than they are something that a team can absolutely, definitely control, just because they're so reliant on offensive error, like running back fumbles. That's usually like you can try to strip the ball, but if a running back has it cradled properly, there's probably not a good chance of you stripping the ball. You can try to get an interception, but if the quarterback reads the defense properly, chances are you aren't going to get that interception because the quarterback reads the defense properly, makes a proper decision, and then you don't get an interception. So overall, I tend to view turnovers as great but random events that can't necessarily be within the team's control, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, So next point of discussion here is the completion percentage. Obviously, the Lions struggled with giving up completions, particularly to running backs and tight ends last year. New England, slightly better, still barely bottom half, but not near as bad as Detroit. So, with Detroit having pretty decent secondary talent going forward with Slakewind, Tabor, etc., do you expect that to improve? Do you expect that to improve more naturally because of Patricia, or do you expect to see the Lions toward the bottom again for some reason?
Well, to be honest, I think that completion percentage is really bad. Is a stat that when it comes to Detroit is really based around linebacker coverage and our inability to get pass rush. To me, our corners, while they weren't necessarily great outside of play, they were solid enough that they weren't the problem, I don't think, last year with our defense. I would really look more at the completion percentage as far as being the fact that we don't have a covered linebacker. Jared Davis and Tahir Whitehead both really struggled in that area. Jalen Reese-Maben was okay there. Really the only okay-ish cover linebacker that we had. I would expect that to improve just because Jared Davis is going to get better, I think, and I think we need to expect him to improve. And I don't think Tahir Whitehead will be back. And if he is back, I would expect Patricia to use him in a role that wouldn't require as much from him in coverage. But another thing is our pass rush. We lost probably our second best pass rusher in Kerry Hyder for the year last year. So him coming back, I expect will be a little bit of a boost. But overall, we just need more talent on the defensive line. It's been a problem ever since Stu left and Fairley left, and it just kept on getting worse as Ansah really struggled to stay healthy and really struggled to gain any sort of consistency with consistency with pressure. Obviously, Zetto has accumulated a great number of pressure stats, but I don't consider him like a true difference maker. But that's just me.
So yeah, you brought up the pass rush here. This is sack percentage. I don't know if it's like total pass plays or pressures or what. But Detroit was all the way down here at 5 3/4%, which was bottom 10, and New England was actually top 10, almost 7%. And I think you and I both agree that you can make the case Detroit actually has a bit more defensive talent than New England did last year, particularly in the playoffs. What do you think that is a result of? Is that a result of Patricia's scheme? Is that something that he can bring to Detroit next year? Do you expect improvements in that area with the current group? Do you want to see outside influence? Talk a little bit about like the defensive line front seven pressures type thing.
Yeah, I think Patricia has done a really good job at putting guys in places where they can be successful. And I think that one of the major examples of that, especially from a Detroit standpoint, is Kyle Van Noy. Van Noy was simply terrible in Detroit, and I don't really care what he does from a Patriots standpoint, because I just know that he's a limited player at best, and yet Patricia had him really making plays and really being comfortable in his role. He never looked comfortable in Detroit, and I think that's because they asked him to do too much, especially in terms of coverage. So one thing I do expect from Patricia is I do expect from him to put guys in position to where they can be more successful. I think that especially Whitehead would really benefit from having less to do from a coverage standpoint. Just I think that I don't hate Taylor Austin as a defensive coordinator. I think he did a good job here, but I think that could potentially be an upgrade in that sense. And I also expect Bob Quinn to understand our personnel and know that we need serious help, especially in the defensive front seven, if we want to move forward next year with a legitimate chance at the playoffs.
Nice. So, kind of changing points a little bit. I think we covered a lot of the stuff on the defensive side. Is there any particular other thing you want me to pull up, or any other final thoughts you have about the defense? What that could be like for Patricia?
One thing I will say is that I really want us to invest a lot on the defensive line.
Yep.
I think that it's unacceptable the way that they played last year. I think that there was this grading system that you, I believe, shared on our Facebook chat. And all of our defensive linemen, Zettel aside, were ranked significantly below average.
Yeah.
And so one thing I will say is that if Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia want to do anything with the defense next year, they just need more talent there. It's just simple as that for me. But other than that, I'm good to move on.
Cool. So yeah, I'm actually going to touch on that real quick. I have the picture up on my iPad here. Zettel was ranked 16th out of 75, which was 80th percent. Obviously, higher the percentage, the better. Washington was 55 out of 75. Onset was 56 out of 75, the worst end on the team. Akeem Spence was 63 out of 104 at DT. He was the best defensive tackle. Ledbetter was second at 69. Ashong was 76 out of 104. And Florinata, in part because of the injuries, was 83, or only 20%. So outside of Zettel, our highest percentage of defensive linemen was 39%. Of course, 50 is average. Of course, that doesn't mean that each guy didn't have their moments. Jared Davis was ranked 40% at linebacker. He finished the year very, very strongly. It's definitely something that I would agree definitely needs to be improved, particularly that interior pass rush. And when we do our Lions off-season preview, we'll get into some of the options to fix that. Next thing, I'm going to kind of switch over a little bit here, and we'll go a little bit more toward the offensive side progressively. But I want to start by talking about discipline. And one of the things that Matt Patricia can really bring to Detroit is the discipline and focus and leadership of the Patriots. So I have the penalties up here. Detroit was basically right in the middle of the road here, 15th with 6.5. But one thing that's been very consistent over Belichick and, of course, by extension, Patricia's time in New England, is that they're very, very low on the penalties called list. In fact, this year they were second behind only Carolina. So what kind of impact do you think that that's going to have on the Lions going forward? And do you expect Patricia to bring that with him from his time in New England to Detroit?
Just to clarify, offensive penalties or just total? Okay. Well, I'll say this. One of the things that I think that was really detrimental to us in the Schwartz era was really bad penalty problems and discipline problems. And I think that got better under Caldwell, and I think it can get better. But I think that one of the things we have to consider, especially along the offensive line, is the discipline problems, particularly with Greg Robinson in that left tackle. I felt like he would go off for 3 to 4 false starts every game. Probably an exaggeration, but I think that it was a major problem with Greg Robinson. It got better once Michaela went in. But yeah, overall, I feel like we have room to improve the discipline, and I think that one of the things that Quinn has been really good about is making sure that he's acquiring guys that are really good culture guys that work really hard and can remain disciplined and can remain can just focus on doing their job, like the Patriots say, the do your job mentality, next man up, and all that. So yeah, overall, I think that discipline was not something I felt like was a huge problem under Caldwell, but there's certainly room for improvement.
And yeah, do you think that Patricia bringing that New England discipline type mentality could be that improvement?
Pardon?
Do you think that Patricia bringing in that New England disciplined mentality could be a cause of that improvement next season?
It could be, but I'm always a little wary of us, like, I don't know, putting New England up on a pedestal a little bit, just because they do have Belichick, and so I'm always a little wary when we start talking about, well, New England does this, so we naturally have to do this because it worked for New England. New England's a sort of different place and different time, and they're in a different space in the NFL. They have a greatest of all time quarterback, a greatest of all time head coach, and what works for them may not necessarily work for us. But yeah, I definitely think that bringing in some of that culture is definitely valuable, and could be valuable for our discipline.
So one thing that I'm going to see if I can find here is opponent net yards per game, maybe, might be the way to go. One thing that we know about Bob Quinn, and we're probably going to see the same thing with Patricia in roster decisions, is that they both very highly value the special teams aspect of the game. And really, that bottom third of the depth of the team, and really find those guys that make impacts on special teams. So, with that being said, what are your expectations for the special teams side, whether that be Prater, Martin, Agnew, or just punt and kick return coverage next season? I'll see what I can find that while you talk.
Yeah. Final stats, because I don't really understand where we're at from a special teams perspective, particularly on coverage. I don't see there being a problem on special teams. I think that actually, if you look at most of the data, they say that we're a really good special teams unit.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Last year. Pardon?
That's where I was going. Is like we already have a really good special teams unit, but like, do you expect more of the same type of thing? Do you expect improvement in that area? Like, obviously they both value that bottom third. So do you think that that would make a significant impact in even more so in roster decisions? Looking for guys to play special teams?
I think that there's always room for improvement in any football team. I don't think that, like, even when, for example, teams make it to the Super Bowl, they make it to a Super Bowl with lots of deficiencies and room for improvement. And even and then next year, those deficiencies, even when most of the team returns, comes back, those deficiencies start to show themselves a little more. So obviously there's room for improvement in any special teams unit. But overall, I still think that we were a really good special teams unit last year. I expect that to continue under Patricia. I don't know how much better it can really get from here. Agnew was possibly the best punt returner and kick returner in football last year. I think that Prater is probably a top 5 kicker, probably top 3 kicker in the league, and I think that Sam Martin is obviously a really good punter as well. So overall, my main concern is with the coverage units, and off the top of my head, I can't quite remember how we did on special teams coverage this year.
Yeah, punt's not good. I'm trying to see if there's a kickoff one, but yeah, we are not good at punt. Doesn't have a kickoff one I can see though. Okay, so anyway, now time to go a little bit to the offensive side. So obviously Patricia does have a little bit of a background in the offensive line. Let's go into QB sack percentage here. One thing, of course, the Lions really struggled with offensive line depth and giving up quite a bit of sacks last year as a result of that. Finished bottom 10 in sacks allowed. With Patricia's background in the offensive line, and of course him bringing in Jeff Davidson as the offensive line coach, highly respected OL coach there. What do you expect from the offensive line going forward? Do you expect that it'll get better with health? Do you want to see more people brought in? Do you think it'll get better as a result of scheme? And where do you want to see that come from?
Yeah, overall, I think that our offensive line is really good on paper. The only issue is obviously the left guard spot. And I think that only Quinn really knows where Joe Dahl is at in his development, if he's ready for that spot. I expect that Quinn will decide that Joe Dahl is probably not up to snuff for this year in terms of left guard, so I would expect that to be a major component. But I like Glasgow at center, I like Lang at right guard, I like Taylor Decker at left guard, and then Ricky Wagner at right guard. Right tackle. And so overall, I don't have a major problem with the offensive line. I think obviously, if you have the opportunity to get a blue chip offensive lineman, I think you have to look very hard at that. Will Hernandez is a guy I really liked in the limited time that I've seen him in the draft. And then there are some other guys that I wouldn't mind either in free agency. I think that Norwell is a big name. I think that Pugh is a possibility. There's options at left guard I think we have in terms of improving that spot. But aside from that, I wouldn't go too far into the offensive line. Maybe grab a mid-round center to fill that Glasgow depth and glue guy on the offensive line. Isaiah Wynn might be a fit there. I haven't gotten too deep into the draft, so I don't quite know what sort of mid-round offensive line we could potentially get, but yeah, that's what I look at for the offensive line. It was mostly a coaching thing, I think, and an injuries thing. But yeah, that would be my personal thought.
Yeah. So, sticking with the passing theme here and the offensive theme, but switching from offensive line to weapons and quarterback play. One thing that the Lions have had no issues with in recent years is their passing attack. Golden Tate, 3 of the last 4 years, 1,000-yard receiver, each of the last 4 years, 90-plus receptions. Marvin Jones had a fantastic year last year, leading the league in yards per catch. Eric Ebron finally came on late at the end of the after the trade deadline. A couple of other guys that can make an impact, like Kenny Galladay, T.J. Jones, even maybe Jace Billingsley, should injuries pop up. With most of the offensive staff staying intact, and with Patricia not being the offensive-minded coach, do you expect more of the same or even improvement from the Lions in that area without Caldwell? Or do you expect them to fall because of the loss of Caldwell and Callahan?
I expect the passing attack to mostly remain intact. The one concern I would have is Eric Ebron. I'm not aware if we've picked up his option yet.
We have.
Have we picked up his option?
Yes, we did last year.
Okay. So then Eric Ebron is back next year.
Last year, though. It is a contract year.
Pardon?
It is a contract year, though, so this is his last year.
Yep. But overall, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Ideally, in an ideal world, we'd have a number 1 wide receiver, because I think that both Tate and Marvin kind of fit into that really good wide receiver 2 area, but I don't see us investing in that. I don't think that's worthwhile investing in.
So, yeah, sorry about that. I was in the house.
All good.
Were you done with your point?
Ideally, yeah.
Okay.
But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where we have limited resources, and there's lots of needs before wide receiver. So I wouldn't touch it. Ideally, though, I do want us to look at a running back, and I know that we had a conversation right before we did this show about running back and what it looks like to invest in running back. We recently discovered through Darius Geis's public comments that the Lions would probably not be pursuing him, which I was rather distraught about. I don't understand why we're taking options off the table at this time. But you know, it's Quinn's team, it's not my team. But I do want us to invest in running back at some point. I think that's just the right thing to do. Maybe if we got a blue chip left guard, running back becomes slightly less of a problem. But I still want a really good running back in Detroit next year. I think it's unacceptable the way that we forced Stafford to run a very one-dimensional offense for pretty much the entirety of his career, possibly exempting that 1 year in 2013 with Reggie Bush and a prime pre-injury Joik Bell. But yeah, that clearly is an area where I'd like to see some investment. Amir Abdullah and and Tion Green didn't show enough to me last year to say that either one of them should be the primary running back for next year. So.
Cool. So yeah, we'll actually get into the run game in just a little bit, to go a little bit more in depth. But first, I want to cover scoring. This is points per game last year, and this does include the Super Bowl, which is why New England and Philadelphia are both as high as they are. But Detroit here, the gap between Detroit and New Orleans at 4 is about the same as the gap between Detroit and Minnesota at 10. So we're clearly in the top 10 offenses in football. Is that something that needs to be drastically improved or overhauled going into next year, like I think both agree the defense needs to be? Or is that something where we're one piece away, or one, like offensive lineman, one running back, one tight end away from being in that top 2, top 3 range with LA and Philly?
I don't tend to look at points per game. I tend to just my eyes, and obviously I've seen a lot of Lions games. Last year I saw virtually every game, probably except for the Pittsburgh game. To me, the Lions are a one-dimensional offense, and they do that one dimension really, really well. Stafford is a great quarterback. He doesn't get enough love nationally. Yeah, I would just really focus our offensive investment, whatever on the guard position, the left guard position, and the running back. We need at least one blue chip impact player, whether that be at left guard or at running back. I think that's up to Bob Quinn, obviously, and he's clearly favoring left guard at this point, I would say, as a position to upgrade there.
So one thing that Patricia did make Norvin's press conference, touching back on that and the original intentions of doing this here a little bit, is that he said that he wants a team, and his number one priority is getting a team that represents Detroit and plays clutch and shows toughness in big moments. And that was one thing that Detroit did really well last year. We averaged 8 points a game in the fourth quarter, which was top 5 in the league. And obviously Stafford, the past couple years, has shown that he has propensity to come back in the fourth quarter, should his team be down. So what do you want to see in that area going forward? You said that there's a need for improvement in every area of this team. So what would you expect to say is the way that we can improve our fourth quarter play and finishing games off and finishing wins strong, and or coming back and stealing wins at last minute?
I don't have a major problem with the no huddle offense that we run in 2-minute situations and situations where we're down. I would like to see a little bit more creativity from Cooter or whoever ends up calling our offensive plays. I understand that Patricia has said that Cooter will be on staff next year, but did not commit to Cooter as offensive coordinator. But I would like to see a little bit more creativity from Cooter in terms of a passing attack, or whoever is calling our plays. In the passing attack, less screens, less slants, less drag routes. But yeah, overall, I don't have a major problem with how that's run. Really, my major problem is we're running the ball. And I think that would help us not be in so many situations where Stafford is in a position where you have to make a ton of plays in the fourth quarter to catch up to a team and come back to win the game. That's obviously a really great asset to have. And I love that Stafford has that mentality where he can organize the offense in 2-minute situations. But overall, I like it if we relied less on that asset and started really dominating games from the start, especially in the first quarter. Yeah, that would be my thoughts on that.
Cool. So you did bring up the no huddle just now. I looked up, this is offensive plays per game. The Lions are actually, believe it or not, bottom 5-ish, like 0.1 plays away from being bottom 4. Which really kind of seems like it may not be as up-tempo or as often as we think. So with Stafford's success, obviously New England is actually number 1 in plays per game. Do you want to see a little bit more of a no-huddle type offense, or are you comfortable with taking things really, really slow and just grinding down that clock and keeping games close?
Here's one thing I'll say about that. I think that no huddle is an important tool in any team's playbook in the modern NFL. How much you want to use it is dependent upon game situation. I didn't have a major problem with how much no huddle we were running, but last year. But one thing I will say is that if you're going to use the no huddle as sparingly as you do, which is really only when we're down and we really need to score quickly, if you're going to use it as often as Caldwell did last year, which is not very often at all, you have to have a running attack. If you want to go really up tempo and spread and passing attack all over the place like New England does, then I think you should go up tempo more. But if we're going to invest in a running game, if we're going to say that no, we want a distribution of plays closer to 50-50 between running attack and passing attack, we want to dominate time of possession, which I think is an important stat to look at in terms of keeping our defense rested and keeping our defense from tiring out. Then I think you want to go no huddle less. But that would just be my personal thought.
So yeah, you brought up time of possession. Detroit was actually right in the middle at 29.5. And New England, of course, Patricia didn't run New England's offense, but just for the record, they were slightly more than us. So next thing that we're going to switch to is, I know you feel very strongly about the run game. The Lions were tied with Arizona. Of course, Arizona didn't have David Johnson for the worst and second worst rushing attack in football last year, at least according to yards per carry. So where exactly do you expect that improvement to come from? Do you think it comes from the offensive line? Do you think it comes from an upgraded running back? Do you think it comes from scheme? The Lions had a absolutely atrocious scheme with wide receiver, tight end, offensive line assistant head coach, and offensive assistant Ron Prince last year. Do you think that getting a guy like Davidson in here helps that? Do you think maybe Patricia himself as an offensive line guy helps that? Do you think that the Lions are bottom 5 again next year?
Well, I hope we're not bottom 5 in the league next year. I'm going to be very upset if we are. But yeah, I think obviously it's a mixture of everything. When you're that bad of a team running the ball, I think that it's pretty clear that it's on everyone to improve. one of the areas that I think we really can improve is obviously coaching, which we had done. I believe that Jeff Davidson is a major upgrade on Ron Prince. And I think that will help. Sorry, were you saying something?
Oh, I just said at least on the offensive line. Ron Prince had 5 jobs last year.
Yeah, and so I think that will help. I also think that we do need someone needs to input into the rushing attack in terms of the coaching staff. Whether that be Patricia, whether that be Davidson, someone needs to help tutor the rushing attack area of the game. And the fact that we appear to be moving in the direction of a power scheme more so than a zonal scheme, with the bringing in of Davidson, I think suggests that someone else will have input into that area of the offense, and so that's really positive for me. But one of the things, and then injuries, which are obviously somewhat random. I don't think that we can control really injuries. If teams could control injuries, everyone would be healthy all the time. So it's just kind of a shrug thing. But one thing that I will say is the running back position is something that I think we should have invested heavily in. Something that I feel has been underinvested in throughout the tenure of Bob Quinn. And I think that Martin Mayhew, while he tried to invest in it, all of his attempts at investing in it have failed or were only good for 1 year. Bush and Best being the two that I would say worked for 1 year. Yeah, I think we need to invest in a running back, whether that's in free agency, whether that's in draft, whether that's in the trade. Just because I don't think that Amir Abdullah is very good. I think that we gave him a shot at being a primary back, and he got outperformed by a UDFA running back from Cincinnati. And don't get me wrong, I love guys like Tion Green, but I don't think Tion Green's the answer either. I think that Tion Green's major asset that he brings to your team is the fact that he'll hit the hole hard and he'll fall forward when he gets tackled, which is an asset, but I don't think he creates yards for himself. I don't think he can make a bad play into a good play. And I don't think that any of our running backs really have that skill set now. It's part of the reason why I'm so high on Darius Geis, is because I do think that Darius Geis brings that to the table. I think that he can break tackles. He has the vision and elusiveness in the open field to really make a difference there. And I think he has the athleticism to be a big play threat anytime he touches the ball. I don't see that from our running backs this year. I think that if you look at the Eagles, for example, they invested in a running back. They got Blunt, and then they added on top of Blunt Clement, and then they added on top of Blunt and Clement, they added Ajayi, who I think is very underrated. I think that he has a lot of the same attributes like Geis. I really like about his game. So yeah, overall I would say that running back is still a powerful need, and I would look seriously at investing heavily in that.
Yeah, so one thing I was going to bring up here, these are advanced statistics. Shout out to Football Outsiders. They do a lot of great stuff here on this site. This is the running back rankings here. You see Amir Abdullah, this is out of 47 rushers of over 100 players with over 100 rushing attempts. Amir Abdullah finished just barely ahead of LeGarrette Blount at 36 in both DVOA and DYAR. The top two players this year were easily, by a very significant margin, Alvin Kamara, who was a second-round pick. He finished at a whopping 44.5% in DVOA. And the second best was way behind Kamara, but still a very solid and respectable 27.5% from Dion Lewis. Kamara was a second-rounder. Hunt, who finished 4th and 5th, was a day 3 pick, I believe. He might have been a third-rounder. And Dion Lewis is a free agent, and he finished 1 and 2. And then, of course, you have the guys like the Alex Collins. I believe he was a day 3 pick. Jamal Williams was a day 3 pick, who I liked last year as well. So, do you feel like running back shouldn't need to be addressed? It's something that has to be addressed in the first round, with guys like Fournette, Le'Veon was a second, Elliott, even Jordan Howard was a late round pick. So does it have to be a guy like a Fournette or a Elliott, or can it be a free agent like a Dion Lewis or a Le'Veon Bell, or a late round guy like a Kamara, Hunt, Collins, go on and
on? I would say that running back is the position where you can find value almost anywhere. That is true. However, I really feel like in a situation where you really need where you have most of your offensive line taken care of, and you have a major hole in the rushing attack, and you really need that one guy to really come in and impact on a really high level. I think that looking at a first-round draft pick is the best, most effective, and most kind of value-oriented way to look at filling that position. I think if you look at Ezekiel Elliott, every time he's on the field for Dallas, even from an intangible standpoint, even from a standpoint of not just looking at the straight stats, I don't think we're arguing here that Dion Lewis is a better player than Ezekiel Elliott, and if we are, then that's a totally different discussion. But I think that Elliott completely transformed the culture of that Dallas offense back into the rushing juggernaut that it was with DeMarco Murray. I think that if you look at Fournette, did the same thing for the Jacksonville offense, gave Bortles a really great outlet for lots of offensive production, where Bortles doesn't have to do anything. And I think that Jacksonville taking the ball out of Bortles' hands is an immense help to their offense. I think that if you look at Gurley, he does the same thing. His rookie year had a bit of a down sophomore season, but really came back strong this year with Sean McVay. I think that first round running backs have had by far the best hit rate, the best rate of immediate impact on a given team, as opposed to free agent running backs, as opposed to traded running backs, as opposed to mid-round running back. Everyone loves the mid-round running back. Everyone loves the Jordan Howards. But they forget that for every Jordan Howard, there's like 5 Javante Bookers or 5 Jeremy McNicholases or 5 guys who just don't offer a lot. And I think that in our situation, we need to be better at running the ball next year. Preferably, we need to be great at rushing the ball next year. I feel like in order to get where we want to go, I think if you look at the playoff teams this year, all of them rush the ball at a really high level. And I think that the best way, the most effective way to ensure that that's the case next year is to really invest heavily in first round running back. So that's obviously my personal opinion, and I understand that you have a different opinion.
Yeah, so one more thing before I go into my thoughts and get into a little bit of a debate here is Amir Abdullah had the lowest success rate on his runs of any rushing running back with over 100 carries. So is this a situation where we can get improvement with literally anybody that we get? I mean, we could invest in a nobody UDFA and get an improvement here if Amir Abdullah is this bad, right?
Yeah, I think this is a situation where you can really easily upgrade for minimal investment. But to me, it's not a question of upgrading. It's a question of how do we get playoff caliber rushing attacks? How do we get a playoff caliber rushing attack? And I think that if you look at it in that light, how do we get into that Minnesota? How do we get into that Philadelphia? How do we get into that Jacksonville tier of rushing attacks to take a lot of pressure off Stafford and to take a lot of pressure off that defense by resting them more and having more time of possession? I think that if you're looking at it from that perspective as opposed to just a how can we upgrade this perspective, I really think that we need a substantial investment.
Yeah, and so looking at these here, this is going back to the team yards per game here. Kansas City was in the playoffs, they're number 1. New Orleans is in the playoffs at number 3. Philly in the playoffs at number 6. LA, of course, Todd Gurley. Tennessee, playoffs here. The 2 teams that weren't in the playoffs, 3 teams that were in the playoffs were Dallas, who has Zeke, Green Bay, who had a combination of Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. I was actually a huge fan of Aaron Jones last year. And Cleveland, who had Isaiah Crowell as a free agent. Really, is adding a rushing... Okay, well, actually here, I'm going to I was just saying that to make a point. I'm going to change a little bit here with my question. Do you think that adding a rushing attack will take away from Matthew Stafford? Because a lot of these quarterbacks up here, Kansas City had Alex Smith, Dallas had Dak Prescott, Green Bay had Brett Hundley, Deshaun Kaiser, Nick Foles during the playoffs, because this includes playoffs. Jared Goff, you could argue, is in the top 10 quarterback. Marcus Mariota, you could say, is in the top 10. Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky. I mean, the only 2 real good quarterbacks that are up here, I would say, are Drew Brees, Cam Newton, and if you want to throw Atlanta in there at 12, Matt Ryan. So do you think that adding a rushing attack will take a lot away from Matthew Stafford and what he's able to do?
Not at all. I think if anything, it's going to push Stafford to new heights. I think if you look at the quarterbacks just from the fact that Blake freaking Bortles made the playoffs last year and made the AFC Championship last year. I think that's the perfect spin on what a good rushing attack can do for you. and obviously a great defense, but we also are going to invest heavily in defense next
few years.
off season, I would hope. Overall, I'd say that no, it doesn't take it at all away from staff. If anything, it opens up more opportunities for staff downfield off of play action. I think if you look at, for example, Atlanta is a really great example of this in action. Last year, and to a certain degree, although a lesser degree, this year under Shanahan and Sarkisian, they focused on the rushing attack. They focused on, okay, well, how do we get Devonta Freeman moving, and how do we get them to make big chunk plays, and things that really helped Matt Ryan open up Matt Ryan's game to new heights last year, especially off of play action, finding Julio Jones. I mean, like, that Falcons offense last year was just incredible. Like, it was incredible. They came very close, but they didn't quite get there in the Super Bowl last year. But I don't think that takes that all away from what they managed to accomplish, and how the likes of Tony Romo, likes of Matt Ryan have really improved dramatically with a substantive rushing attack behind them. Both of them had MVP caliber seasons, and both of them, I would say, are in Stafford general tier of quarterback. So if we're thinking in terms of how do we get Stafford to an NFL MVP level season, I think that it starts with a great rushing attack that can really open up him downfield on play action. So that would just be my thought on that.
So going back to rushing attack here, and just really focusing on that, and going back to specific rushers here. This is going back to the yards per game. Teams like the Chargers with Melvin Gordon, Pittsburgh, who of course has Le'Veon Bell. I mean, I don't know how far down you really want. I don't know how many of these guys you really follow here. Minnesota, you could say Dalvin Cook, but he got hurt. Jai got traded. Depending on how specific you want to go, some of these teams in the bottom half of the league have pretty good running backs. In fact, I would say that Le'Veon Bell, most people would say, is a top 5 running back at worst in football. Do you think that it has to be a big name rusher, or can it be a guy who simply is there and does his job like an Isaiah Crowell, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara?
Big name rusher. I'm just looking at it from a perspective of how do we maximize our rushing attack next year. To me, that involves a big name rusher. If you look at the guys that have had a lot of success rushing the ball consistently, they generally have great rushers. I think that even if you wanted to say that, okay, well, obviously I'd love to have an Alvin Kamara, I'd love to have a Jordan Howard, and those guys were picked outside the first round. But I think if you're looking at it from the perspective of how do we ensure that we get that guy, no one knew that Alvin Kamara would lead the league in yards per carry, and I don't think that's realistic to expect from most second-round running backs out there. Not every second-round running back is going to be an Alvin Kamara, but one thing we can do to ensure that we maximize our chances of getting a Todd Gurley, getting a Ezekiel Elliott, getting a Le'Veon Bell, is to spend first round pick on on a running back bench. And I think that if we did that, we'd already have the playoff caliber rushing attack, even without any investment in left guard. I think that Darius Guys to me offers the best chance of immediate impact right now, making the Lions a top 10 running team, which I think would be huge for this offense and for this defense. I think that it would be huge for the defense too. I think that if you look at Dallas, they didn't have a lot of stars last year. They still have a lot of consistency outside of Sean. And Sean Lee seems to be the only name that's coming to mind right now. But they invested in rushing attack. They invested in the offensive line, and that has helped their defense by keeping them rested, keeping them off the field, making sure that they are ready to play when they do have to step up. And to me, I think that's the sort of model we should be looking at, as opposed to a New England model whereby Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. He obviously can handle the ball for throwing 40 plus times a game, easy. I don't think Stafford's that kind of quarterback. I think Stafford is the type of quarterback that needs something around him in order to be successful.
Yeah, so I'm actually finally going to give my thoughts here after letting you talk for a little while. Personally, of course, I know I disagree with that. Like even looking at last year's class, you have Okoye. Okay, Leonard Fournette had a great year in Jacksonville, right? But he also had a very, very solid defense in place. They were the number one. I would say that Jacksonville had the number one defense last year. I mean, you can make the argument that teams like Minnesota or whoever were better, but I mean, that's a situation where you need just one guy, and you need to eat the clock, and that's what you're going for. McCaffrey was just more of a receiver, all right, but then you move down the list here. Kamara had one of the best seasons ever for a running back as a rookie. Kareem Hunt had one of the best years of the league as a rookie. Tariq Cohen is a very reliable threat. In fact, he actually challenged Jordan Howard from some time this year. Here's Jamal Williams, who played a big role in Green Bay's offense with Rodgers out. You have Marlon Mack, who's going to be a feature-type guy for Indianapolis next year. You have Aaron Jones, who I was a huge fan of last year. He played a nice impact in Green Bay's offensive attack. And even going back to the draft before that, yes, he is a very solid running back, but he was only good, decent, and we saw he averaged 4 yards per carry. The other running backs were slightly better than him this year. Granted, some of that was offensive line injuries again. But, I mean, if you're having Maurice Morris outrun Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas, whereas Derrick Henry passed to Marco Murray, Devontae Booker is going to take an increased role in Denver next year with them losing Charles and possibly Anderson. Kenneth Dixon had success in Baltimore behind Alex Collins, who was another late rounder. Paul Perkins was the Giants' feature back. Jordan Howard, of course, we've already talked about. Alex Collins was a pretty good running back this year. I mean, you can keep going through here. I think the last running back that was a significant difference between him and the guys below him was probably Todd Gurley, and that's because he's an Offensive Player of the Year type of guy every year with McVay's system. But even then, you still have Tevin Coleman, who was a top 10 type back. David Johnson was a top 5 type back in the game. And in fact, you can even make the argument that he challenges Todd Gurley. So maybe that point I just made isn't even true. J.J. was in that class. I mean, before that, you don't even have first-round running backs. Devontae Freeman in that class. Not really a lot there, though, otherwise. this class. Le'Veon Bell was a second rounder. Not really a lot in that class, though, either. Latavius Murray had a little bit of success in Minnesota because of Shermer. Even Theo Riddick, as a receiving back, he's a top 5 receiving back in football. He's just not really that good of a running back. And then prior to that, you look at first-round running backs. Trent Richardson, not really that good. Martin, he's had his share of successes, but he's also struggled. David Wilson, not really much going for him. Mark Ingram got heavily outplayed by Kamara this year. In fact, Saints fans want him gone. CJ Spiller flopped. Ryan Matthews flopped. Javi Best flopped. Sean Marino flopped. Devin Brown flopped. Beanie Wells flopped. I mean, Darren McFadden flopped. Jonathan Stewart, okay, but flopped. Flopped there, one good year. So I'm not really a fan of taking a first-round running back. And I think that especially in this class, and especially in this situation, where we already have a top 4 offense, or at least close enough to it, and we had a bottom 10 defense, this is a situation where, alright, I feel very comfortable with what we're doing on offense. We're already in an elite tier of offense. We did better than 2/3 of playoff teams this year. Whereas on defense, in fact, I'll go back here and go back to the defensive thing. Let's just take a look at scoring defenses. The Lions here were 21st. Out of the teams below us in defense, top 10 pick, top 10 pick, top 10 pick, top 10 pick, top half pick, top half pick, top 5 pick, almost top 10 pick, top 5 pick, top 5 pick, top 5 pick. And even the teams above us, top 10 pick. Okay, Tennessee exception there. Top half pick. Top 10, almost top 10 pick. Then you get into the top half defenses. So I think this is a situation where, personally, if we want to make the playoffs, we can't be in a bottom 10 pick area in defense. We're already better than most playoff teams on offense, but we're not better than most bottom 10 teams on defense. So I really want to see this team improve its defensive side of the ball first. And while, yes, Patricia's going to help with that, Patricia's also going to help with the offense. The offensive line getting healthy is going to help. The offensive scheme changing is going to help. Getting Ebron fully, hopefully, for a whole year production is going to help. And I'm really not at all concerned with the offense. I need a heavy investment with defense. And even if you want to reverse that and say, okay, which top teams made the playoff, or which top defenses made the playoffs, well, the Chargers were very solid. They barely missed because Buffalo. In fact, Buffalo only made it over LA because the Bengals lost, who have a bottom 10 defense, bottom half defense. Minnesota, Conference Championship. Jacksonville, Conference Championship. Philadelphia, Super Bowl. Atlanta, coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. New England, Super Bowl appearance. So all of these top-tier defenses are the teams that are winning, and all of these bottom-tier defenses are teams that are constant losers. Whereas you look at, I'll even go points a game, for instance, just to be a little bit generous. Well, you have the teams, of course, like the New Englands and such. Kansas City, first round exit. Detroit didn't make the playoffs. Baltimore, top 10 in offense and defense, didn't make the playoffs. So I think that there's exceptions to every rule, but this is clearly a situation where we're so close to being a Super Bowl type team on offense. I mean, if you add a field goal a game, just making one more field goal per game, this is an offense that's as good as New Orleans, Atlanta, New England, LA, Philadelphia, and that's including the Super Bowl. Of course, Philadelphia put up a lot in the Super Bowl on New England and vice versa. So really, to me, what I want to see focused on very, very heavily, and I'll get more into specific picks and things like that in the actual off-season preview, but this is a situation where I value getting a guy like a Ronald Jones or a Sony Michel, who could be the next Alvin Kamara, could be the next Kareem Hunt, could be the next, etc., etc., etc. Or we're getting that guy who, yeah, he's a first-round running back, but is he really going to add a lot to our offense? Yeah, he'll make it better. He could get us that extra field goal a game, but who's to say Sonny Michel, Ronald Jones can't, etc. Um, Whereas getting a key guy on defense, say this team is able to get Maurice Hurst, for example, who, by the way, check out our breakdown. That'll be at the end of the video, the link to that. If we're able to get a guy like a Maurice Hurst on this defense, right, we're instantly transforming our pass rush and even to some degree our run stopping ability. We're instantly getting off the field more on third downs. We're instantly getting the ball back into our offense's hands more to score even more points, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So getting a game changer on defense was able to get us out of that bottom 10 range into playoff range as a defense. I think is more important than getting an offense that's going to take us from solid playoff range to Super Bowl range. So,
Right.
your response to that?
Um. Yeah, I agree that there's other ways that we could skin this cat. But if you ask me, that top 5 offense, it's a mirage to me. It's a mirage. It's filled with garbage time numbers and numbers in the fourth quarter when we're trying to desperately get back in the game. To me, the offense failed dramatically in key situations when we needed them to show up. I think back to that Pittsburgh game, when if we made 1 4th and short, we win that game. But we just couldn't do it. I think back to that Cincinnati game where we make 1 3rd and short, or a few 3rd and shorts, we can win that game. To me, that top 5 offense, yeah, it's a nice statistic, but I don't know that we were necessarily truly a top 5 offense if you looked at it from a film perspective. But to me, if you look at it this way, the 2 major factors, and the 2 most important factors, 3 most important factors in playoff success are the quarterback, the rushing attack, and the defense. We have our quarterback, so I think we can eliminate that. Rushing attack and defense. We are bottom in both of those areas, and both of those areas require significant investment. Look, I'm okay if we pay a lower tier left guard and get a 1st round running back and spend the rest of our resources on improving the defense. I have no problem with that. That seems to me to be the way to go, to improve the 2 areas in which most accurately predict playoff success. But to me, the rushing attack, if you want to improve that, you have a couple of options. If you want to improve that to be a top 5 rushing attack and a real, true playoff caliber rushing attack, to me, then you have 2 options. You can either pay Le'Veon Bell something like $14 to $16 million or whatever he's gonna get, probably a crap ton of money. But he would make us a top 5 rushing attack. Or I think you can invest in a Darius Geis in the 1st round. I think that would make us a top 5 rushing attack. Just because I think that highly of Geis, I think he's a great prospect that does so much of what the Lions need from a running back. he's not the best in the receiving game is my one kind of real knock on him.
We have
But
Theo for that.
he was, but we have Riddick for that, exactly. So I would say that to me, that the fact that we aren't even looking, we aren't even discussing, we aren't even like making some kind of keeping him in mind is really quite extraordinary to me. And I mean, like, you could say that Ronald Jones could be the next Alvin Kamara, but he could also be the next Amir Abdullah. Like, we've gone down this road of second round running backs before. Why not try something new? Why not try something fresh? Why not go running back first round? We've seen other teams have success, particularly lately, as the running back position continues to get devalued. We're picking high-end running backs in the first round, and I think that's just a way to go for me. If you want to pick a first-round running back and invest every other pick in the defense, invest every other cent in the defense, then that's fine by me. But to me, I think we desperately need not only to improve our defense, but also to improve our rushing attack.
Yeah, and see, I'm gonna come to your point about like the one play and such like that you were started off with, taking out the Atlanta game, because I think we can both agree that take thing was kind of baloney. I mean, the Panthers game, Tahir Whitehead gave up almost 200 yards to a tight end. If we got a linebacker, we win that game. And of course, I think Jared was out then too. The Saints game, we gave up 52 points. I think 38 points is enough to win versus most teams. Giving up 52 points, you're not going to win versus most teams. The Steelers game, yeah, we could have scored, we could have done better with the rushing attack and such like that. But part of that was injuries and play calling. Running your fifth best running back at third string offensive lineman on 4th and goal is not going to have success. On the other hand, that you can make the argument that Juju Smith-Schuster 90 whatever yard touchdown was the key decider. And if they don't score that 90-yard touchdown, we also win that game. The Vikings game, Case Keenum was running all over us. If we don't give up that rushing touchdown to Case Keenum, heck, even if they call that blocked kick at the end a touchdown, then don't call Slay offsides as he maintains, that's a tie game. We're going into overtime. This game, again, while we could have scored more, if you're giving up 44 points to Joe Flacco and Alex Collins, there's kind of something wrong there. And at that point, the Bengals game was just, that was a coaching disaster, in my opinion. We didn't have Amir in that game either. He was a healthy scratch. Matthew Stafford looked horrible. Darius Slay was being owned by AJ Green. So there was a lot more than just rushing that went into that loss. And I think you could say the same to the Atlanta game too. So while you could say, yes, if we score that touchdown versus Pittsburgh, we win. Yes, maybe we have a little bit more running back. We could score 54 points on the Saints. Yes, we could probably go in another touchdown versus Carolina or whatever. And you could also say the exact opposite and say we shouldn't be giving up 52 points. We shouldn't have given up 200 yards to a third-string tight end. We shouldn't have given up a 95-yard touchdown pass to a third-string receiver.
Right, and I think that's a fair point. To me, I guess the paradigm to me is that we need to improve our rushing attack and we need to improve our defense, because those are the two primary indicators of playoff success. I think that they work extremely well as indicators of playoff success. But to me, the rushing attack just needs one blue chip running back. One blue chip running back, and we've got that covered. the defense is just it's just in shambles. We're not gonna be able to fix every problem there. But to me, we just need one more piece before we're one piece away from being a really good rushing attack. And that would help our defense. And then we can invest everything else in our defense, which I agree with, but was simply not up to task last summer. But to me, we need that one more piece. We need that one blue chip piece, that surefire blue chip piece that we know for as close to certainty as we can be that they're going to be a blue chip piece for us. And we fixed half the problem with our team last year, which ultimately came down to rushing attack and defense, in my opinion. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Chris. I really do. There's a lot of really great running backs coming in the second round and third round and beyond, and there have been some really crazy rushing attacks that have been developed that haven't required as much investment as a first round running back. But to me, in this situation, in this moment where we have most of our offensive line completely set, I think that we invest substantially in a running back. That can be in Le'Veon Bell for like 10 plus million. I would rather invest that 10 plus million in our defense, or it could be a first round pick with Darius Guys, which I think would be the most immediately impactful player we could possibly pick.
Yeah, now see, for me, what I'm seeing here, and I have this up because Dion Lewis is ranked 1 and 2, and he's a free agent. But what I'm hoping for, and again, we'll get into a lot of the specifics in full plans and such in the offseason preview. But personally, to me, I would like a guy like a Dion Lewis. If we got Le'Veon, all right. I'm not the biggest fan of him myself. I think a lot of his abilities come from O-line. If we're able to get an Isaiah Crowell, in fact, we can go back here. Cleveland was 5th in yards per carry, so Isaiah Crowell could work. Just finding a guy that will improve this unit to get us to keep us in a playoff caliber offense and hopefully improve us to a Super Bowl caliber offense can come from a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be just Le'Veon or Geist. It can be a Dion Lewis or an Isaiah Crowell or whoever. Whereas to me, we have to have that impact player on the defensive side to get us to a competent level. Like if we're able to, I mean, let's look at scoring defense. Let me find that here. And then we'll go through here and we'll bring these. Obviously, we already have a couple in Slay and Quinn here. But the Chargers pass rush with Bosa and Ingram. Minnesota has Griffin and Hunter. Jacksonville has Calais Campbell and Dante Fowler and Miles Jack. And we saw, of course, Philadelphia has Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, all that. Baltimore, a ton of defensive line depth and linebackers and Jimmy Smith. Atlanta has Vic Beasley, Deion Jones, etc. I think New England is the first team here that doesn't really have that big time impact player. Whereas to me,
you could argue Devin McCourty.
What?
You could argue Devin McCourty, but that's just.
Oh yeah, and even he has some struggles. Okay, so if you want to say Devin McCourty, then Chicago was next. Then Dallas, and of course you can talk about Seattle and Pittsburgh and all them too. They have a bunch of guys. But yeah, even in Dallas and Chicago, all right. fine. However, on the rushing side of things, if we go back to the rushing attacks and go per yards per attempt, I personally find that the most valuable stat. Kareem Hunt's not necessarily the biggest name. Maurice Morris outrushed Ezekiel Elliott. Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Crowell, Jay Ajayi. Okay, Todd Gurley, superstar, fine. Derrick Henry, Jonathan Stewart. Okay, fine. Leonard Fournette. So 2 of the top 10 rushing attacks have, I would say, high-quality superstars, at least leading the way in this particular stat. Whereas defenses, we saw, each of the top 7 teams, 6 teams have a very high-quality impact player. So for me, getting a guy that could be our next, obviously this is a little extreme, but if we were able to get Mo Hurst and he turns into an Aaron Donald type impact player for us, bam, we're instantly overhauling our defense with 1 pick. Whereas if we sign a guy like Dion Lewis in free agency, pair him with Maurice Hurst, not only are we improving our defense with a guy like Hurst, but we're heavily improving our rushing attack with this year top 2 running back in Dion Lewis. So in fact, we actually have Dion higher than Todd Gurley, who won Offensive Player of the Year on Football Outsiders. So there's definitely a lot of ways that you can go about fixing these. And obviously, we both agree where the problem areas are. We both agree that defense needs to work, and we both agree that the run game has to be just somehow. It's just that personally, I'm of the mindset that we need that first round to be on defense. And we can get a Dion Lewis or a Ronald Jones or a whoever at running back. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Darius Geis.
Yeah, to me, Dion Lewis is a guy that really benefits from the Patriot system.
That's kind of where we're going, though, isn't it? With bringing Patricia in?
Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, we don't have the GOAT at quarterback. And we don't have the passing attack that the Patriots have, where we can open up the rushing attack just from the sheer fact that the passing attack is just so dominant. And plus, Lewis was a good player earlier than this last year, but this was his one breakout year. And we've seen a lot of these running backs have really good years and then just kind of fall off a little bit. Before that time, it was Blunt who had a really great year with the Patriots. Then he went over to Eagles, and yes, he helped the Eagles. He was a major contributor to the Eagles. But the guy, the dude on that rushing attack, in my opinion, is Jay Ajayi, as opposed to LeGarrette Blount. So, yeah, I think we agree mostly. It's just a matter of what sort of resources do we want to invest in what sort of teams. To me, the Dallas model of whereby we invest a lot in our offensive line and we invest a lot in our rushing attack is just the way to go. We're so close. We just need that one piece. To me, Geis has the best chance out of any of these running backs to be that one piece outside of Le'Veon Bell. And so to me, it makes more sense. Whereas I don't think we're one piece away from being that good on defense. I think that we're multiple pieces away from being that good on defense. Mo Hurst, he's a good player. I don't expect Aaron Donald level impact from him. Vita Vea is my favorite player in this draft in terms from a Lions perspective. And even then, I don't think he'll be a Dominican Sue next year. But to me, Darius Guys could very easily be better than Leonard Fournette was last year. I think that if you look at his LSU numbers, they were right in stride with Leonard Fournette, while they were both on the same team. So to me, like, some people even said that Geist was a better prospect than Fournette, both on the same team.
Personally, I agree with that.
That would just be my personal thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that I agree that I liked Geist better than Leo. That was all.
Yeah, so that would be my personal thought. I think we've gone back and forth to the point where we've kind of reached an impasse where we kind of said that everything that needs to be said on that. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think we got pretty deep. And look, again, as far as specifics or stuff like that, I'm definitely going to be doing an off-season preview. I'll probably do that solo in a little bit, too. And if you want to come on and do one with me, we can also work on that too. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a bunch of different options to adjust every single thing, and I think that that's part of the beauty of the Lions this year, and part of why there's so much hope in the city and so much energy here, is we're getting a new head coach in Patricia. We, for the most part, have a GM that a lot of us here trust in Bob Quinn to get the right players and get the right talent. We have a top 5, 10 quarterback in Stafford. We have the weapons around him at wide receiver, tight end. We have a decent O-line in place if they can stay healthy. We're just really, I mean, even this year, right? We were literally less than a yard away from making the playoffs. If that Golden Tate catch is called a touchdown and not reversed, we're in the playoffs. We're playing LA in LA, and who knows? We might have been able to get our first playoff win, like Atlanta pulled off the upset. I mean,
LA was a very inexperienced team last year. They were definitely vulnerable.
yeah, and I mean, maybe right now we're talking about us playing Philly. Okay, Philly had Nick Foles. I mean, obviously, I think that Nick Foles proved his worth in the playoffs, but at the time, going into the playoffs, going into the second round, you can make the argument that the Lions, especially coming off their first playoff win in, well, only the second season ever that they've won a playoff game. We've only won a playoff game 1 year before in 1992. You can make the argument that the energy would be so high, we might be able to pull off the upset with Philly in Nick Foles' first playoff game. So, I mean, from there we're talking 2 playoff wins going into a conference championship versus Minnesota, who we already beaten in Minnesota, and you saw how they got blown out by Philly. So we're really not that. I mean, there's an infinite amount of what ifs that we could bring up here, but honestly, I don't think that we're really that far off. Granted,
I don't. We really need to improve our defense.
oh,
We
for
really
sure.
need to improve our rushing attack. But we have a lot of pieces in place, and we have a lot of resources that we can spend. It's unheard of that a recently minted mega contract quarterback team would have approximately 50 million in cap space to spend. So I think we're in a good position. I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, exactly, and that's honestly what makes this offseason coming up so exciting. At least for me, I'm sure you and a lot of Lions fans here would agree. Um, that it's just the amount of, and the other thing too is we all agree, all of us in the group chat, all of us across Lions Nation, I think, generally agree that those are our 2 biggest areas. I don't really see a lot of people saying we need an offensive tackle. I don't really see a lot of people saying that we need a fourth or fifth wide receiver. Even tight ends, I think a lot of people are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with Ebron after his end of the year success. Uh, I think a lot of us really understand that, hey, if we can get a pass rush with a defensive lineman and we can get a ground game going, however we choose to adjust those areas, um, that's really where we're at. I mean, granted, of course, again, let's not go and say that we're going to be a Jacksonville type defense next year. And let's not go out there and say that we're going to have some top 5 rushing attack. Even if we do get Geis, I don't think that's realistic. In fact, if we even did get Geis or Barkley, I don't think we're a top 10 rushing attack next year, because there's so much overhaul. But I mean, there's expectations. They're starting to finally brew up and finally come up here, and the energy level is very deservedly reaching peak levels. So, but yeah, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I just love that you ended on that optimistic note. I know we spent a lot of time going over, well, okay, we really need this, we really need that, we really need this, but like, this team is in a good spot right now. I feel like we have a chance to really build something special.
Yep.
And I think that we can invest in defense, we can invest in a great running back or a great left guard, and I think that we're right in this mix next year. I think that if Patricia is as good as advertised with in terms of scheming our defense and making sure that we put the right guys in the right position to succeed. And if Bob Quinn invests in that defense and Bob Quinn invests in that rushing attack, I think we're going to be dangerous next year. And that's where I want to leave it off.
So
on that note of optimism for the team.
One more thing first, now that you brought up next year. Let's see if I can 18, 19. Or we can go over maybe some initial expectations going into next year. No, not that one. It's Colts. I know there's one on here somewhere.
You want me to pull up the schedule?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to find it on mine so that we can show the audience too. We'll just do it this way. Cool. So Carolina at home, Chicago at home, of course, Green Bay at home, of course, LA at home, Minnesota at home, New England at Ford Field is going to be fun. Jets at home, Seahawks at home. So of these 8 home games, which ones do you expect us to go in and contend, win, or do you expect us to get blown out or crushed in any of them, or where do you see these going?
Well, I'm just trying to look at. Okay, so sorry. Go over the teams one by one, and I'll give you my quick thoughts.
Cool.
As we go along.
Yeah. So the first one on here that they have listed here is the Carolina Panthers at home again.
Carolina. I think we can beat Carolina. I think Carolina's on the same level as us. I think that we had more resources to improve than Carolina, so I'm going to say that we beat Carolina.
Yeah, and as we mentioned not too long ago when we played the Panthers last year, I don't really foresee Patricia giving up 200 yards to Ed Dixon next year. So I think that that's definitely a reasonable expectation, at least going in, that we can win that one. Next up, we have Chicago with their new head coach, Matt Nagy.
I didn't see a lot from Trubisky last year. This draft class is not very good for wide receivers, so I don't expect them to get a blue chip in the wide receiver draft class.
Unless they get Ridley.
Really, they really need wide receivers. Trubisky. That's before we even know if Trubisky's any good, which I still contend is not necessarily the case that he's any. I would say that we should beat Chicago. Chicago are on the path to being a good team, depending on whether or not Trubisky shows out. But I think we should beat them.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, especially after sweeping them this year. We do always play them close. I will give them that. But I think Patricia's adjustments and scheming and all of that will really help us with taking a big step against the Bears. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, ideally for them coming back. Most likely in week 17 at that point.
I think that we probably split the series with the Packers, home and away. Home, we should beat them. But Aaron Rodgers is going to be Aaron Rodgers, and that could hurt us. Another thing that I found was particularly alarming about the Packers was, despite the fact that they did end up making the playoffs and they struggled with Brett Hundley under center, the rushing attack did seem to be more improved than it was in previous years. So that's a major concern for me.
Yeah, man, Aaron Jones. I unfortunately didn't have this channel really started last year. I would have done a video on him. He was one of my favorite prospects in the draft last year. Shout out to Eric Schlitt, by the way, if you are watching these, for turning me on to him last year and suggesting him as a fit for the Lions, actually. Got me to watch him, and I really enjoyed his tape. And yeah, I think that he's going to be a big threat for them going forward. I don't think he's going to be like that Todd Gurley or anything going into the Rams here, but he is certainly a very capable running back. So speaking of Todd Gurley, we have the LA Rams at home.
Rams, I think that everyone is going to be on the lookout for game planning for McVay's innovations this year. They're a young team, could get better, but I don't know. For me, they're capped out already, despite the fact that they have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. That's very concerning to me. So, to me, I don't see a lot. I think that we should beat the Rams.
My biggest concern with the Rams is Aaron Donald. I'm not sure. Of course, we still have to find that left guard spot. But TJ Lane and Graham Glasgow versus Aaron Donald does not seem like a plan for success. Although I do agree on the defensive side for us. Having Patricia on that defensive side with all of his film work and all of his work ethic and all that, if anyone's going to be able to find a way to stop the Rams' offensive scheme, I would bet that it's probably Matt Patricia. So, given this point in time, I do think it's really close, but I do think that there's definitely a fair reason to expect that we can win that one as well. Next up, we have the Vikings at home. So keep in mind, we did lose at home to them on Thanksgiving this year. We'll probably play them on Thanksgiving again next year. Thoughts on that one?
Vikings are just so wide open for me because of their quarterback situation. True. If they bring back Case Keenum, though, I don't see him doing the things that he did this year, because obviously, well, Pat Shurmur is gone, and that sort of momentum that pushed him forward into being a good quarterback is kind of gone. So to me, I don't consider Case Keenum to be that good. I don't think that his career has shown him to be that good. I think, credit to him, he had a really great year, but I think that we can beat Minnesota if they bring back Case Keenum. If they get someone like a Kirk Cousins, then we're having a totally different conversation, I think. But yeah, that would be my initial thought.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to say agree as well. I really think that a lot of it could come down to quarterback play. But definitely, at this point in time, I expect that we beat the Vikings with them losing Shermer. They will be getting Dalvin Cook back, and after his explosive start, that could be a little bit concerning. But with our defensive improvement with Patricia that we expect to see, of course, we still have areas that we're going to adjust in free agency and all that as well. At this point in time, I do expect that we sweep the Vikings again as we did 2 years ago. Next up on the list here is the defending Super Bowl losers, the New England Patriots.
I expect Patricia to get wrecked by those. I think that overall, just the fact that we have Tom Brady and the fact that he's 40 years old and he's still going strong as ever is really amazing to me. I have no idea how that's happening. I have no idea how it is that he hasn't fallen off yet. But to me, the New England Patriots are still at the top of the food chain. One loss in the Super Bowl doesn't change that. To me, I think we're just outclassed.
Yeah, and for me too, while Patricia is obviously very familiar with Brady and they do all their film work and all that stuff together, I do think that McDaniels is a little bit of a different beast in itself there. So, while I do think the Patriots will have a bit of a drop off for sure, especially with some of their losses that they'll have and very little cap space to improve. As long as Belichick and Brady are there, they're probably going to beat us. So, yeah, there's our first loss that I think that we can both agree on is probably going to happen. So next up is the New York Jets at home.
If we don't beat the New York Jets, I'll tell you what, I will be extremely concerned. The New York Jets are a team that could be dangerous. The best case scenario I see for the New York Jets in terms of matching up against us would be if they got someone like Lamar Jackson in the draft. I think that we've in general been fairly vulnerable to running quarterbacks.
Well, heck, just mobile quarterbacks, not even just running quarterbacks.
Pardon?
I would even argue it's just mobile quarterbacks. I don't even think Case Keenum is a running quarterback.
Yeah, mobile quarterbacks. Even more so than running quarterbacks. But to me, this is just a scenario where we are in serious trouble if we don't beat the New York Jets next year.
For me, I think a lot of it is going to come down to when and how we play them. If they're one of those teams where say, hey, you're going to open the season versus the New York Jets in Patricia's first game, I think we might be kind of screwed. I think no matter who it is, there's a good chance we lose game 1 of next year, simply because there's going to be such a big adjustment period and a learning curve for Patricia as a head coach, and we can get into all that too. But if we're playing them at any point later on in the year, pending injuries and all that too, the only way that the Jets win is if their front four is able to get pressure, they take Lamar. So yeah, while I do like us in that one, there's certainly the chance that pending what happens with the scheduling and the offseason, the Jets can be the favorites there. And the final home game that's listed here is the Seattle Seahawks. So just sticking on your running quarterback point with Russell Wilson.
The Seahawks, man, that brings back memories.
That was in Seattle. That was in Seattle.
just thinking about how we lost one batted ball by KJ Wright, I think it was.
Yeah.
That just leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
And the playoff game.
To be honest, though, I feel like a bit of a homer since I picked multiple wins for the Lions in a row. But to me, the Seahawks are a team whose windows have kind of closed. They're only going to get older from here. Their defensive stars are only going to get older and worse from here. Russell Wilson is amazing. I think he's a top 5 quarterback, top 3 potentially quarterback. But there's just a lot of different holes with this Seahawks team. Not a lot of cap room for them to get better. I just don't see us losing that game unless Russell Wilson has an amazing game, which of course at any point in time could happen. I don't discount Russell Wilson, but that's just how I feel about it right now.
Yeah, I think for me, what it's going to come down to is the Seahawks are fantastic matchup-wise. With our weakness at this point, I would say being our pass rush and our defensive line, and their weakness being their offensive line. Going into the offseason, I think that could be an interesting matchup to watch. The fact that we struggled with more mobile quarterbacks could be an issue, but that could hopefully change with Patricia, since he really did a job on Tyrod Taylor. And again, just matchup-wise, both of us have good secondaries and receiving cores, but have some issues on the lines. So I think that one, I agree with you, will probably come down to Stafford versus Wilson, at least looking at it at a time. Hopefully we can pull that one out, but we'll have to see. So now we have in the away games action of this here. First one, we'll start with the division rival, Chicago, Green Bay, Minnesota.
The Chicago game, I think we could win on the road. The Minnesota game, I see us losing on the road. And the Green Bay game, I see us losing on the road.
Yeah, I would probably say I agree, though. We do suck at Soldier Field, so I think that you could even make the argument that we could even lose there. And we have beaten Minnesota twice in a row in Minneapolis, so I think that you can make the argument to win there. But yeah, going 3-3, 4-2 in the division is probably about right. Next, we move on to the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh man, Dallas is a team that I think the world of. I think that they have a bunch of young secondary guys that are only going to get better from here. I think they've got a defensive line genius and Rod Marinelli, who has done great work covering for the deficiencies talent-wise in the defensive line. But I see Zeke and that offensive line as being too much for us right now. Especially on the road, I would say we'd lose.
Yeah, see, for me, I'm looking at it the opposite way. I think that our defense under Patricia and hopefully our defensive improvements in the offseason will get us to a capable level there. But right now, our offense is so much better than I would expect their defense to be. So I'm optimistic a little bit, and I'm hoping that we can come out on top on that one. So next up, we head into the two NFC West opponents on the road. We play the NFC West quad this year, of course. We'll start with the Arizona Cardinals.
Arizona. I don't see Arizona doing much next year. They'll get David Johnson back. I think David Johnson's the best running back in football right now, so I never want to count him out. But to me, that Arizona team is just one gigantic question mark. Everything from their quarterback to their head coach to their offensive line to whether or not Larry Fitzgerald is coming back for another year. Yeah, just everything is just one giant question mark. I think we should beat the one giant question mark. We have more pieces in place, and I think that we can beat them.
Yeah, and the other thing too is they're going to go through an adjustment period with Wilkes on the defensive side too. So I think that could play a factor in all this as well. I believe they run a 3-4 now, but they're going to switch to a 4-3. So that could be something to watch and see how they adjust around that. But yeah, that should, at least at this point in time, depending who their quarterback is, they're another team that could be in play for Lamar. So if they do end up with a Lamar Jackson type, get Larry Fitzgerald back, adjust appropriately on defense, that's a reasonable expectation for a loss as well. And then the other NFC West team, what?
Sorry. Lamar Jackson, I think, is really underrated at this point in the draft process, and I think that wherever he goes, if he goes to a team with some pieces, I think he'll make that team instantaneously better.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, at some point during quarterback week, we will come out with a Lamar Jackson video, but that's for a future edition. So now, moving over to the other NFC West team here, the final one, we have the San Francisco 49ers.
49ers is such a difficult team to project at this point because they had so many losses, and then they went on this 5-game winning streak with Jimmy Garoppolo playing some pretty decent teams. Jacksonville's no slouch. Tennessee's no slouch. But I don't know. I feel like I'm projecting too many wins for the Lions. Even though that shouldn't factor in, it does for me. I don't think that the Lions are good enough to go like 12-4 or something like that. So I think this is a loss.
Trap game.
Yeah.
I can understand that, especially with the aspects that the 49ers have too. They're another one of those teams where they have a lot of ways to improve and a very aggressive staff. With Shanahan and Lynch, they're going to be definitely doing their team a service in the offseason. Can definitely trust them to improve the right way and get even better than they were. So yeah, I can definitely understand where you're coming from with that. But like, again, this is going to be one of those teams where I think it's a factor where when we play them. Like if we're playing them at the beginning of the year, I'm certain that we could expect a loss there. Simply just due to the adjustment of the Patricia defense. But if we're playing them week 16, week 17, trying to fight for that last playoff spot or whatever, or fight for a division, something along those lines, you can expect a motivated Lions team to come out and win. So that'll be another one of those games where we have to look and see. By the time the schedules come out, we'll be like a day out from the draft and have a pretty good idea where everyone's going. So definitely something to revisit at a later point. And then finally here, we have the two AFC East teams. Whoops, accidentally. Whatever. The two AFC East teams left. The Miami Dolphins, we'll start with them.
Miami. I don't see a lot with Miami, to be honest. They do have Ndamukong Suh, But he's only getting older. Cameron Wake is only getting older. Um, and to me, Miami are a team that they have some pieces, but they don't really fit well together. They're kind of like this mishmash of misfit toys, so to speak.
Yep.
So to me, I'd expect us to win against Miami.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident in that one as well. We should be able to. In fact, they're probably the one team that I would feel most confident about on our whole schedule at this point, um, in getting the W. Simply because if they stick with Tannehill, there's a clear advantage there. No real running back outside Kenyon Drake, who I think they probably stick with again. Um, Wide receivers, they could be losing Jarvis Landry, don't really have that tight end. Their offensive line is garbage, and they have no left guard. I don't even think they have one on the roster right now. Defense is only average at best. Not really a fan of their secondary outside Rashad Jones and Xavier Howard. Don't really have a very strong linebacking core, and their D line is getting old. Uh, so not only do they have, in my opinion, one of the weaker teams in football, but they also have very minimal ways to improve, and so many ways that they could, so many areas that they need to improve, rather.
Can I
So
just say one more thing about that?
what?
Uh, can I just say one more
Oh
thing
yeah,
about
please.
that? When Ryan Tannenbaum is running your organization, you're in a bad spot. Like, to me, that guy is a disaster as a GM. His 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 teams are always in cap hell, and yeah, I just don't see a lot from them.
Yeah. So yeah, Miami. In fact, if I had to predict one team I was most confident about being in the bottom 5 or 10 in the NFL next year, that would be my pick. Um, And finally, to wrap it up here, we've got the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park.
I like the Buffalo Bills. I like the culture that they got building
Sure.
with Sean McDermott. The fact that they got to the playoffs for their first ever year is a really exciting. It's a really exciting time for their franchise. They have some serious ammo to move up or move down for a quarterback and find their guy. They have a good offensive line. They have a great running back in LaShawn McCoy. They have a good defense. To me, though, the thing about it is their their quarterback position is just so in
Inconsistent.
flux right now. I have no idea where they're going with that. It could be Tyrod, it could be Lamar, it could be
It's a lot
Josh
of.
Allen, it could be Nathan Peterman. Like that's just the whole thing. I have no idea where this team is gonna go, and therefore I have no idea what to pick for this game.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I don't even really have to think much about their quarterback position. I think that this is going to be our, like you picked the 49ers in that one. I think that the Bills are going to be that game for us where we just flop, head over heels, and something goes wrong one way or another. Maybe it's injuries, maybe it's a bad play, maybe it's just maybe they're the team we opened the season with and just flat out suck. Um, but I mean, they're that team that, like last year with the Ravens, we saw that. It's just one of those average teams that's going to come in and completely destroy us somehow. And I think that the quarterback position is kind of like that too. We saw last year they have Joe Flacco with Baltimore. Um, so honestly, I would pick the Bills here for that game being our trap game. So yeah,
So,
that gives us. Wait, what?
I'm just wondering, have you been keeping track of our records? I'm hoping you have.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's somewhere about where we were last year, that 97 to 96 range. I would say what lost it or lost versus New England. I think we both said loss versus Green Bay, right?
Yeah.
6-2. Loss versus Buffalo, San Fran is 4. A loss at Lambeau is 5. And a loss at either Soldier or US Bank is 6. So yeah, about 10-6.
Yeah. To me, like that's about where we're at right now. It could change obviously very rapidly. Everything in the NFL is always changing very rapidly. There's so many different momentum shifts, things we didn't expect, different coaches that either succeed really greatly or fail really badly. And I mean, like, as much as I like the hire of Matt Patricia, I don't necessarily discount the possibility that he could be trash. I really liked the hiring of Hugh Jackson, and they're right now 1-31. So now I'm like, okay, that wasn't a good hire, but yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and yeah, it was really fun. So, do you have any final thoughts about Patricia upcoming season review, anything like that you want to get out?
Um, just basically rushing attack and defense. Everything that we do in this offseason should be built around satisfying one of those two areas, in my opinion. Beyond that, I think we've talked for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did not expect that. But yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And might be back for the off-season preview. We'll have to see.
For sure.
But yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. Alright, guys. Well, thank you guys again for stopping by Fast Potential 101. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Subscribe, leave a comment below on your guys' thoughts, what you want to see the Lions do this offseason, what you guys think about the Patricia hire and his initial press conference today, and anything Lions related. And again, guys, hopefully we get to see some of you guys back. Don't forget to check out some of our draft breakdowns if you guys are Lions fans here. Cover some guys that the Lions might be looking at in the first round. Darius Guys, Mohurst, among others. And even more to come in the coming weeks. So thanks again, guys. Hope to see you guys again soon. Peace out for now.
Bye.